Welcome to the Interior Analysis Podcast. I'm your host for this one, Jelani Kelly.
I'm Evan Westman.
And I'm David Jones.
And this episode we will be discussing, sorry to bother you, starring Keith Stanfield, Tessa Thompson, others, and written by Boots Riley, right?
And directed.
Written and directed by Boots Riley. This is my first time seeing the movie. I don't know when this will come out, but it'll probably still be on Netflix. I'd recommend it. I liked it. I initially picked this movie because I wanted to see Keith Stanfield in a starring role. I had seen him in like an ensemble main cast role in Atlanta, the TV show by Donald Glover. I first saw him in Get Out many years back. Oh, he was also the detective in Knives Out, but I don't think he was given a big chance to show everything he could do in that.
I still like that role with him, though. He's one of my favorite parts
it
of
was
that
still
movie.
funny. Because he's the voice, everybody in that movie is weird. He's sort of one of the very few voices of reason.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's go around the table. David, have you guys seen this movie before? I know Evan's note says he has, but David, have you seen this?
No, I've never seen it, and I actually just got finished watching it. Like, I think it ended at 7:54. So it's like all I can think about is how it ended right now. And it's like, I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say since you watched the video I didn't get to watch yet. But like, wow, what a strange film. My friends told me it was weird, but I didn't know how weird. I kept waiting. I was like, when is this gonna get that weird? And I was like, all right, I guess it was weird. And then it happened, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just kind of quirky up until, I mean, spoilers, but like the horse reveal is just insane.
Freak the hell out of it. They still freak me out just because they look like just costumes, but like they looked like puppets at the same time. It was really freaky.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a mix of a costume and an animatronic. I think that's how they do it.
They had like human skin, but it was like really like stretched out. Oh my god. Evan, talk about your initial thoughts before we get into horses.
Well, going off of that, so this was my second time seeing it, but I watched it with my roommate, who I think had seen like the first half, but not up to. She hadn't seen the horse reveal, or the horse people Equisapien reveal. And afterward, I think she described it as like it hits you like a Mack truck out of left field. It's been a while since I first saw it, so I don't remember perfectly, but I know I reacted to it initially as like, this is probably top 3 weirdest movies I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure it still holds that spot, but I was more prepared for it this time, so it didn't hit quite as much. But I'm really glad I rewatched it. I actually started rewatching it, I think, like a couple months back, but then, Jelani, you said you wanted to do an episode, so I was like, okay, I'll finish rewatching it later when we actually do it. But it definitely got a lot better on rewatch. Like, I think it wasn't, like, forgettable the first time, but I definitely...
I don't know how you can forget it, even if you tried.
I didn't, like, look into it that much. I didn't do any kind of, like, I didn't write a review about it or anything. It kind of ranked pretty mid for me. And after rewatching it, I think it's safe to say that I definitely like this. It's not on any, like, super high favorites, but I definitely like it, and I definitely would see it again. I'd buy it on DVD. It's up there.
That's when you know you like a movie.
I don't necessarily always like the things I buy on DVD. Sometimes I'll just...
What?
Well, if it's for really cheap, like this I would spend some more money on. But, like, some things... This past week, I just went to a thrift store that had some DVDs, and they were all, like, $1 or $2 each, so... I just got stuff that, like, oh, I saw that, like, 5 years ago. I should probably rewatch it. Or, I've heard this is okay, or at least something I should see. I'll spend $1 on it because I can keep it and it's less than an Amazon rental. Sometimes I'll do that. I own things on DVD that I don't really like. But not many. Most of the time it's stuff I like. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, long way of saying... So I'm going to link to an article because I think the reason I watched this the first time was because a couple of me and Jelani, our friends at the Triangle, they wrote this article after Green Book won Best Picture. I'll link to it so people can read the whole thing, but the gist of it was basically like Green Book, I mean, they didn't think it deserved to win Best Picture, and they were like, if this is like the kind of movie about like racial issues that we're talking about in 2018, like there are so many better movies that came out this year, the year being 2018, that are like way better at like doing cultural commentary about like race issues. And this was one on the list. The other ones are Blind Spotting, Black Panther, Black Klansman, If Beale Street Could Talk.
Black Klansman was out that year?
Yeah. Yeah. And then The Hate
this...
You Give.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty abysmal.
I still haven't seen Green Book, but I have now seen all of the ones on that list.
I forget who said it, but I think it's the perfect like way to look at Green Book and the whole issue with the Oscars. Like, if Green Book had come out in the 90s, I think it should have won the Oscar. But for where we were at in 2018 now, like, it has a very, for anyone who's seen Philadelphia, it has a very Philadelphia vibe, where it has that kind of twist on the social issue.
Yeah, well, it's also like, it's kind of like racism through like the lens of a white person's eyes, both in terms of the character and director, I think. Whereas I'm pretty sure every one of the movies on that list are like actually by people of color and like have a protagonist. And better. Well, I can't say for sure because I haven't seen Green Book, but I've heard overwhelmingly better things about all of them.
I saw Black Klansman, I saw Black Panther. I did not see The Hate You Give.
Read The Hate You Give.
I think that's my favorite of... Last I checked, I've only seen most of those once, but last I checked, Hate You Give was my favorite of those.
Really? I like
David?
Black Klansman over The Hate You Give, the movie. But the book, I think everyone should read Angie Thomas's book. The book is just superb.
Yeah, I want to rewatch most of those. I've seen Black Panther multiple times, so I don't need to revisit that. But the other ones, I've only seen once each.
I feel like saying that as a white person is like saying I would have voted for Obama for a third term.
I don't know if Black Panther's that movie because it's a Marvel movie, but I did hear people say that about Get Out after it came out, was like, that's the new thing. It's like, I saw Get Out in theaters 3 times, so, you know, I get it, guys.
Not racist.
Yeah. Which if that's your reaction to Get Out, you didn't get it. But yeah, I'll link to that article because it goes into more detail. I would recommend all of those. One other thing initially that I found out, this doesn't really have anything to do with the stuff I was just talking about, but Boots Riley, the director and writer, he actually did most of the soundtrack for this because he's also a rapper and he has like a decent music career, and he wrote an album entitled Sorry to Bother You like several years before the movie came out, so he just used that whole album as the soundtrack for this.
Did he do that one screaming song that stuck in my head? Because I just thought it was so out there and weird sounding.
I only got a chance to listen to a couple of the songs on it today.
If you could say that song bothered me.
Ooh. Well, I'm sure he's very sorry, but Yep, get all the words in there.
I think Armie Hammer probably plays a less weird version of himself in real life after all the cannibal allegations came out. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, this probably isn't even as weird as he gets.
Yeah.
That's one of my notes in this. I have heard his name plenty of times, and I've probably seen movies with him in them, but I didn't know that was him. Like, I don't know the actor like that.
Well, he's going to be even more prominently featured in the next movie we talk about, Call Me By Your Name.
Yeah. He's the co-lead. He's the older guy that's messing with Timothy Chalamet.
He was the Lone Ranger. That's what I know.
I think this is my favorite performance I've seen from him, though. He's such a like perfect like business bro in it, to the point that like, yes, David, I second you on that. He feels like he's very comfortable in this role, which maybe that's just good acting, or maybe he kind of is that in real life. I don't want to like assume, but it wouldn't shock me. Yeah, he just like, and we'll probably link to this video too, but Sage Hayden from Just Right, his video on this movie kind of calls out how he's sort of different than a lot of business tycoons, especially Ben Mendelsohn portrayed business villains.
How many movies is Ben Mendelsohn in where he is that character? I only know Ready Player One. I
think you could argue that's kind of what he is in Rogue One. I think he might also be the villain of Spies in Disguise.
Oh,
which I haven't
God,
seen,
huh?
but I think maybe he's the villain in that.
The movie with Will Smith and Tom Holland.
Yeah, playing essentially just
animated movie.
animated versions that just kind of look like them.
Oh boy.
And if Ben Mendelsohn plays who I think he plays from the poster, they just kind of made like animated Ben Mendelsohn with like more villainous features.
But he's a bad guy, or you think he's a bad guy in Captain Marvel. He was the Skrull.
He's in that too.
Yep, he's one of the Skrulls. Plot twist, the Skrulls are good people. It's not really a spoiler, first of all. The movie's years old. And anybody who actually wanted to watch Captain Marvel would have watched it by now.
Yeah, definitely. In any case, I think it is a good take on this kind of villain that he's doing in his performance where, like...
Elon Musk.
Yeah, he's not, like, the business guy that's just like, now we have all of the money. He's, like, the tech bro, or not tech bro, but, like, business guy that is, like, going around
Frat
your
bro.
office being like, have you guys heard about crypto? Like, you really need to get into this. Get on this Dogecoin. Like, he's that dude. And I feel like it fits better, I think.
Wrapping up my initial thoughts, the horses are weird. The video Evan sent me helped by Just Right. Shout outs to them. Probably going to be referencing it a couple more times throughout this episode, and Google Bad. Even though I wrote this on a Google Doc. All right. Let's go to the first topic. Purposeful weirdness. Evan, you want to kick this topic off? I feel like most of my notes for this are just responses to yours.
Okay. Well, I'll start it off with a question for both of you. Do we think the weirdness here is purposeful? And are there any ways that you think it has a negative impact on the movie's message? David, I want to start with you on that since you're fresh off of it.
So I think yes, and I think there are a lot of purposeful points that really worked, especially I think because it's a writer-director. I feel like I really saw his vision. Like, he probably directed what he saw in his head when he was writing the screenplay, especially when, like, he started working there and the desk movements and everything. And I was like, wow, this is actually an interesting way, a surrealistic take on what you would be doing at this job. But I do think it also passes that threshold a little where it may get too weird and it might isolate an audience per se. Like, I'm not sure if the audience was ready to see all of that horse meat. Because I'm a pretty lewd person, and I even was sat there like, who wrote this? Like, some of the dialogue, specifically like in the elevator, I was like, what is happening? Like, I really was like, I'm like, especially coming off of Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I think does a similar tone thing where it's weird and it's sci-fi, but I think it takes a bigger swing and it lands better than this movie. And it's like, this weirdness, I think I got lost on a little bit. Like we said last time, maybe I wasn't on the same wavelength, but I think I got lost a little bit.
I think the weirdness is purposeful, of course. It's also funny. I think it's funny. The elevator, the first time the Debo Cherry takes him up to the power caller's floor, and the scene goes on to where it's like funny. She's entering so many numbers where it's like funny, and then it's not funny, and then it gets confusing, and then it gets funny again because
it's just so long.
Still going. And then he doesn't enter that in nearly as many numbers when he goes up by himself.
And then once he enters the numbers, the elevator goes,
"Hi,
hi, Cassius. I hope you didn't masturbate today. We need you sharp."
I am a computer, but I wish I had hands to massage your muscular brain.
Oh, fun fact, that was Rosario Dawson. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they got all the voices in this. They got such a big voice cast for this.
Forrest Whitaker was Demarius, the equestrian. Yeah, he was the equestrian that broke dude out of the paddy wagon.
Yeah, for a $3 million movie, they got an amazingly big cast.
Yeah. Didn't know Terry Crews was in this. Didn't know.
That was the biggest surprise in the first 2 minutes. I heard his voice and I was like, wait. And then they panned up and I saw him. And I was like, this movie is going to be wild.
With the bad wig.
Yeah. And
Stephen Young was Invincible. Also Glenn, right? That was Glenn.
Yes.
In Walking Dead. Yeah.
I couldn't recognize him with his eyes still in his head.
Oh, wow. Okay, I haven't seen Walking Dead.
You could say that for both Invincible and Walking Dead.
It hit for Invincible, but then I was like, oh wait, maybe he's talking about Walking Dead too.
Oof, yeah. Tessa Thompson, I mentioned earlier. This is a pretty stacked cast. Amari Hardwick, I believe. He's the main character, or one of the leads in Power, I think. I see him on the posters all the time, and I'm like, he's got to be a lead, right? Like, it's mostly his face up there. I know 50 Cent's in it, too, but, like, I've never seen Power. Don't judge me. And I don't think it had its negative impact on the movie's message. I didn't watch it and think, hey, this movie would be better without the weirdness in it. I think it helped it, because it showed an artistic way of how capitalism affects society and the working class. It also garners attention. I don't know if we'd be talking about it if it wasn't weird. For me, I wanted to watch the movie, like I said, to see Stanfield in a leading role and how he handled that. But I didn't know about all of the other big names in the movie, and I don't know if they were shown off in the trailer. I didn't watch the trailer. I remember seeing the trailer when the movie wasn't even in theaters yet, like on YouTube, but I don't remember that trailer that I watched. But I like the weirdness in this movie, not in everything, everywhere.
Yeah, and again, I don't fault you for that, but I think they both do. I'm going to say the weirdness seems more purposeful here. Not that we need to get into comparing the two, but I watched an interview with Boots Riley, and he said, like, what he saw as, like, the response he was getting in the movies, like, in the, like, early time after its release. He said people were telling him that, like, for some of them, the weirdness did actually turn them off and was distancing, but he said none of them were saying they, like, disagreed with his stance. Like, he kind of felt like everyone could relate to it. I'm sure there's some people who aren't, but I'm sure many of, like, I feel like anyone who doesn't relate to this movie is probably, like, in the 1%. I think the weirdness was a little distancing for me the first time. Like I said, the 1-2 punch for me was the horse people was disturbing, and then it's followed up by the claymation video, and that's really, I don't know if I know some people also have an aversion to it, but I don't like claymation. I think it's, especially like the kind of claymation they have in that video, is like kind of freaky to me.
Like Wallace and Gromit.
Wallace and Gromit I'm more okay with because they kind of like make that look pretty clean. But when it's like kind of sloppy claymation, that it feels like I'm watching a bad dream. I've gotten more okay with it over the years, but like I think probably the first time I saw it, again, it was a while ago, so I don't remember, but I probably was like focusing so much on the weirdness that I was like, and in that scene, like, Cash is, like, wondering if he turns into one of the Equisapiens. And I was like, oh, man, is this going to, like, take that hard of a left turn?
I mean, it did at the end.
It did. Okay, and I didn't remember, because it'd been so long. I was thinking while I was watching it this time, I was like, because I forgot most of, like, the second half of this movie after Steve Lift's party. I was like, I know he, like, ends up joining, like, the Union, basically, at the end. I know there's a riot, but does he turn into one of them at some point? I was like, I feel like he does, but I don't remember when. And then it got to the end, I was like, oh, I guess he doesn't. And then, oh, no, oh, right, yes, he does. I didn't remember wrong.
That makeup where he, like, was half transformed when he hit his nose, that looked freaky.
That's what I'm saying, and it was just, like, over.
Yep.
And then we get a little end credit scene where it's like, who knows how many months later, and he's having like a Rise of the Planet of the Apes Caesar moment, and he's sieging Army Hammer's home.
Why? I expected the horse to be dark skinned. I don't know why why did he turn white? I guess I shouldn't try to make sense out of that. Let's move on. I don't want to think about the horse.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I thought he was hallucinating, no. It's a blatant message about giving up your body and dignity for the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it wasn't much different. Like, it was extreme to look at, but it wasn't much different from what they were already doing at Worry Free. Like, the employees, they were giving up their space to sleep in a room, small room with, like, 5 other people. I mean, they have to dedicate their entire lives to that.
So the one thing, and I looked at your notes, Jelani, I saw you had a bit of a breakdown of this. I didn't understand, and still don't fully, I guess, understand what the purpose of the I got the shit kicked out of me show is. Like, what is that there to comment on?
I'ma go. So the shit kicked out of me shows how people, no matter how bad their situation, will find and consume. I'm reading anything where someone else is doing worse. I figured this out because of Danny Glover's character Langston saying, "I personally love seeing a motherfucker get beat down and humiliated. Makes me feel warm inside." I think it's the reason people watch reality shows with judges. Most of them, in my opinion, aren't watching for the people that are brilliant at whatever the show's advertising, unless it's like America's Got Talent, which those types of shows are a little more rare. They're looking for the worst of the worst to laugh at them. So look at American Idol. Back when American Idol was on and popping, what would you hear about the night after an American Idol episode aired? Hear about how bad someone was at singing, look it up on YouTube, and then through word of mouth or those YouTube postings, they would get more and more attention, more and more views, more and more money. Or Shark Tank, another judge show. I don't watch Shark Tank. If I did, I'd probably watch for the times any of the judges went off on people. From the times I have seen parts of Shark Tank, they weren't really super mean. But I was talking about super mean, any show with Gordon Ramsay. He's judging on most, if not all, of his shows, and you watch to see him beat people down verbally. My guess is it makes people feel a bit better about their situation. They're like, so their thought process might go, my situation is bad, but at least I'm not getting called the donkey by Gordon Ramsay on national television.
Okay, so that's kind of making me see, I guess, a way that it could even kind of feed into like the capitalism commentary.
Yeah,
because obviously there's so much about like unionizing and rising up. So maybe it's like a commentary on keeping like the lower classes docile a little bit.
Brainless.
I also think like he utilizes the humiliation culture like angle a few ways with like Detroit too, and her whole art performance when she comes to blows with Cassius when he's like, why would you let people do this to you? And she's like, well, at least I'm not like selling humans.
Yeah, it's kind of like I don't know if this is exactly that concept, but there's a term called whataboutism, like a logic thing, and it's mostly like a bad faith argument where it's like, why are you mad about that when this person did this as well? The logic, I think, goes like the existence of something worse makes what I'm doing or what X person in question is doing like excusable or whatever, or like it invalidates your argument. It seems like anytime I've heard it talked about, it's like used in bad faith, but there is a little bit of that in here that you guys were just talking about.
He was selling slave labor.
Yeah. To wrap it up, I just like that I think it counts for a lot that even when stuff goes insane and off the rails in this, you can point to a reason for it. Like, even when I can't see what exactly, like, the purpose of something is, I get the impression that there's something there. That counts for a lot, because there's a lot of other movies that I've seen where there's something weird, and it just seems to be there for no reason, and that really distances me.
Yeah, what was the purpose of the probe fight, Evan?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I can't give an explanation for that. I'm not really, like, obviously I love everything everywhere, but I'm not actually going to defend it on that point. I mean, it's serving a function plot-wise. It didn't have to be butt plugs.
That. I said probe.
Okay, whatever.
No, I said probe, I meant probe.
We know what you meant in either case, so... And I'm not saying that, like, anytime weirdness in anything doesn't work for me, that it's, like, necessarily purposeless, but there's a lot of times where, like, if I have to take way too long to figure out, like, Stanley Kubrick is a director that I have a really hard time with because I feel like he just does insane shit for the sake of doing insane shit. And maybe there's a meaning to it, but also, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just not on the same wavelength as him, but he, I feel like, is an example of weirdness without a purpose. And I appreciate that Boots Riley is, even if he's like maybe even turning the dial up a bit on how weird it is, he's still making an effort to make it accessible and meaningful, even for people who don't necessarily like it. Or, like, at the very least, when he shows us something really disturbing, like the horse people, sorry to bring it up again, but, like, when he shows us that, it's pointing to, like, the horrors of capitalism and, like, labor oppression and stuff. So he's, like, doing it for the purpose of highlighting a real world problem. I think that just counts for a lot, rather than, like, showing us something really fucked up just for shock value.
I didn't like 2001.
Ditto. I think it's insanely overrated, but I won't get us off on a tangent there.
I had to watch that for a music class. I like the purposeful weirdness for this movie, although the horse people freak me the fuck out. Let's move on to the next topic. Probably our biggest topic. Commentary on capitalism. Capitalism is bad. Let's start with you. Start on it. We'll go to David.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously not very subtle in its messaging. And I think that was part of why this hit better for me this time, was because in, like, the years between the first time watching this and this time, I've learned a lot more about, like, capitalism and just rhetoric about capitalism and stuff like that. So I kind of vibed with it more, or at least could see a lot of what it was going for a lot better. And I like, this is, again, some stuff that's covered a bit in the Just Right video, but I like how it focuses on, because it would be very easy to make this just like capitalism bad, but I like how it uses, like, it positions Cash in a way where he has to, like, sacrifice to fight capitalism, where he's actually, like, he kind of is winning the system. So when he's being asked to unionize and stuff, like, even if he's on board politically, or, like, he, you know, agrees with what the unionizers and the Left Eye movement are going for, he has a lot to lose because he's, like, ascending the corporate ladder and stuff. I think we could have, I didn't make a topic out of this, but I think there's a lot that we can get into if we want, about, like, how much the movie focuses on Cash's individual relationship with capitalism. How it's, like, at first he's, like, lost and, like, really nihilistic at the very beginning, and he's kind of finding purpose through his career exclusively. And how it's like, and I don't think it's even necessarily saying that, like, it's bad that he's finding his purpose through his career, but it's really strongly highlighting how the systems in place are positioned to exploit that feeling and, like, bend it to their will. One thing I really noticed this time is, like, there's a lot of, I guess, imagery that's, like, really exclusive, where there's a thing for the regular, like, a place for the regular people and a place for the elites. There's that, like, VIP section of the bar that, like, everyone can get into, and then there's the golden elevator for the power callers. And there's even, at one point in the bar, Danny Glover's character asks the bartender for, like, give me the good stuff, and I think the bartender, like, opens this, like, secret hatch in one of the bottles and finds, like, a little one. So I was just noticing there's a lot of stuff like that where there's, like, a separation between what the regular people get and then, like, exclusive stuff. And I didn't, like, unpack all of it, but there's certainly a trend there. Let's start with this question. How do you guys feel about where it ends in terms of, like, I guess tonally, like, how it's kind of positive, but it's not, like, a full victory? I like that ending, but I'll hear from you guys.
Yeah, it's cool. I guess the ending either way wouldn't have changed anything about really anything in the real world, so giving it a downer ending I don't think would have made the message any more or less significant. So being somewhere in the middle, I think, is fine.
Is it not like a downer message though? He's a horse.
Yeah, but he could go back because there's going back juice or whatever, the sauce, just the mixing go back Ep10 sauce. I forget what he called it.
So the impact without the end credit scene of them raiding the home, I was okay with. Seeing him in like full horse form and like raiding the home, it was just like so out of nowhere for me. Like I was like, I don't know. But everything else I liked.
I'll second that. I was kind of. I mean, we can talk about like the mid-credits scene as well if we want. I was talking about more with the ending before that. It just feels like the right place to end with like if they took down Worry Free or Regal View, that feels a little too hopeful, I think, and not necessarily like constructive. Where it ends is just kind of like unionizing is good and we'll do things. And it's like, you know, the end of Cash's arc, so there's like the victory is that he is now in this movie's terms and what I would consider to be on the good side.
And then it began Equicash's arc.
Equicash, yeah. Sorry, that took a second for me to unpack that.
He needs to become Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was fucked up too. When Steve Lift was talking about that, I don't remember it perfectly, but correct me if I'm wrong. This is how I understood his plan: was like implant Cash into the Equisapiens, get them to rise up and like give them hope, but ultimately like Cash was just gonna be a plant that like.
Yep.
So it was like organized revolt.
Yep.
That's so fucked up.
I mean, he was turning people into horses. I found myself asking if I was in Cash's shoes, would I turn on Regal View and help the workers get their union? I'm going to answer first. I think it depends on who I was writing with and for. If I didn't like the motherfuckers I was working with, it's going to be cold, I wouldn't care. And this movie is saying that's a bad thing. Once I realized I was selling slave labor, I would like to think I'd leave. I thought he was going to be selling, I don't know, like furniture or cars or something. What about you guys? What would you do if you were in Cash's shoes where you had that decision to make?
I mean, I'd like to say I would unionize.
Yeah, that's boring.
I think what the tricky part, and this was brought up a bit, but not a ton, is like just the idea that this is going to keep happening whether you resist or not, so you might as well just make money on it.
Mm-hmm.
I hate how seductive that logic is, because in a way it's like there's a truth to it, but also like it's still I think it would still be wrong to take the job.
Nah.
But like at the same time, I don't begrudge Cash for like getting promoted and making money. Just because of the context of the movie, I'm not really happy for him when that's happening, but like I don't feel like he doesn't deserve it. Like he's getting paid well, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But yeah, it does suck that he has to like sacrifice that much for to join the union. But politically, yes, I am basically on board with like unionizing.
Yeah, I would have quit the minute they were like, this is human trafficking and arms dealing. I would have been like, I'm good.
Okay, so you would take the job, but you'd check it out first, like scope it, like I would.
Well, I would have taken the initial job at first when like the guy was like, you don't need any qualifications, you can read. That's like right up my alley. And so then but once I got promoted and they told me that I'm selling people, I would be like, no thanks.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. I feel like I can pretty safely say that I wouldn't do that. I just don't want to like say it too boldly because I've never been in that position. But I really don't think I would.
Were the other people on set trying to unionize Evan, the people of the crew, and you were like, I'm gonna get promoted to senior editor?
No.
For that farm film? Evan?
We don't have that kind of money.
Did you fuck those people over, Evan Westman?
No.
Okay.
And if I did, it wasn't for like that much pay, so it wouldn't have been a good move anyway. So
you're saying you would have done it for less? You son of a bastard.
I knew I wasn't going to get out of that one. Well, there was no good answer there.
No, you can give us all the logic in the world. You're still going to get beaten.
Yeah.
You said something interesting about squeezing your notes.
Yeah, so on the topic of the union, did you guys feel like Squeeze was being deceptive when he first recruits Cash? Because he seems kind of like the way he does it feels kind of sneaky.
Weird.
Where he's like kind of like cornering him in the room, like away from everyone.
And like he keeps complimenting him, like, yeah, man, you just really went for that question. Like you're really asking what we're all thinking, the important stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, Invincible, being a little sus here.
Squeeze in general is like the character that I think I have the most hang-ups with in the movie, where I just don't get him all the time. Like that's one of the moments. His whole thing with Detroit, and then that like just never having like an impact or resolution afterwards. I was like, this is just, what are you doing, Squeeze? I feel like I don't know. I wouldn't want to hang out with Squeeze. And Squeeze seems like he's supposed to be the best friend. So
yeah, he seemed grimy.
I kind of felt the same the first time I saw it. This time around, I was a lot more okay with Squeeze. Maybe that's politics, but I was.
Even though he went behind his back.
I'm still not really okay with that, but it didn't cause as much of a problem for me as it did last time, because like I was like, okay, I see what they're going for thematically. Like Cash is selling out and basically being a traitor, so this is like some form of consequences.
I mean, he was also turned into a fucking horse at the end.
Yeah,
as a consequence.
Yeah, that's true. I just wonder if it's intentional that he comes off as like insidious when he's first trying to recruit Cash. Because after having seen the whole thing and then rewatching it and like, you know, knowing how it ends, I was like way more on board with him. But I still wonder, like, did Boots Riley intend for him to be like somebody that we think of as an ally from the start? Or was that accidental? Because it sounds like all three of us kind of felt like he was sus from the beginning. So I'm sure, and maybe that's not true of everyone, but if we're 3 for 3 here, that says something. But I feel like because of how much this movie like wears its messaging on its sleeve, like Squeeze and Detroit in combination feel like they're embodying this movie's message the most. So it's strange to me that he does come off as so much like he's being deceptive with Cash from the start.
Yeah. And I agree with David, like the fact that the everything but didn't really have a conclusion or go anywhere. I thought they'd have him reveal what happened, but all he did when Cash and Detroit were like together at the end, all he did was like scratch his head and be like, ew, that's awkward.
Yeah, they cut to him for a while during that scene.
Yeah. It was just like, you're not going to air that out. Okay. So I didn't really understand. I watched the Just Right video said that it was because Squeeze and Detroit's morals aligned that they did that. It was just like, okay, but that still didn't feel like concluded. I don't really get that.
I felt no satisfaction if that's the case. Like that was one thing that like if I think I just got some sort of rest, because they even have that like fight that Danny Glover has to break up. That's not a fight where they're just complimenting each other. And
that was hilarious.
Oh, that was funny.
Yeah, I really
have a great year.
You smell really good.
You smell nice.
We're just a bunch of good smelling brothers out here, huh?
And it's like that had more like screen time and more prominence than like what should have been a pivotal conflict for 3 of the main characters, or the protagonist and 2 of his like main people. So I don't know. It really confused me.
I can't believe I forgot about that scene. It's like, maybe we should have a couple of drinks. Yeah, why not 3, 4, 5?
It's hilarious. I agree with you, David, that it feels like a loose thread, but just like throughout the movie, I did feel like Detroit and Squeeze had more chemistry than she had with Cash. They seemed like they vibed better in the scenes they had together.
I hated it.
I'm not saying I necessarily like it, but like I almost felt like they were more shippable just from like how they interacted.
I disagree.
No.
I think Squeeze felt so forced.
Yep.
I felt like he was lying through his teeth.
Yeah.
He was just saying things that he thought that she wanted to hear, and he didn't mean anything.
Stupid mustache.
And like I thought Cash and Detroit had something where like, especially the scene where he comes home and like he's just looking at the joint and they have that moment and they sit on the couch. That I thought was like really cute. I was like, see, like no matter what, it's just like they just like each other. Like that's all. Like that's just it. Like they just want to be with each other, and that's enough.
He didn't even he never. I expected him to like hate her art or say you making all this bullshit art or something at some point, and that never happened. And I love that. Yeah, no, I don't like Squeeze can get squoze for all I care.
I mean, I don't disagree with what you guys are saying, but it's all vibe. Like, I don't feel like there's anything textual to actually point to him. Like, there's no point where he, like, ever does anything that is, like, objectively a lie. Like, there's really no evidence to point to him being deceptive in this movie. It's just all
Yes,
vibes.
there is.
No,
like
when literally no, but I get what he means. So it's really just his acting. Like he acts like there's just this subtext, like he's mischievous, like you just can't trust this dubious man.
No, I agree because it feels like when he's like rallying up the union, like I keep expecting him to like flip and have some ulterior motive because he just feels like he's too good at it. I think, and just maybe that's just like
he said that's what he does. Stirred up trouble when he. Well, that was the scene with Detroit. You go around stirring up trouble. No, I just go where trouble's already been. I just propel it or whatever he said.
Yeah, and I wonder if maybe it's even just like feeding into like a trope of just like that unionizing, like I don't want to say like political figure because that doesn't feel quite right, but like that like inspiring leader who seems too good to be true. I feel like in like every other movie, that person always turns out to be corrupt in some way. So maybe it's just kind of suffering like the weight of that trope.
I mean, he was corrupt. Not morally corrupt. Well, no, it was still morally corrupt, but not unionized morally corrupt. Just that scene, that pissed me off. That scene with him in Detroit on the corner, the first scene they had alone together with the signs. She was spinning the sign and waiting for dude for an hour. And then Cash kind of made up for it by sitting with her in her art thing when she was...
Yeah, and then when she came to hang out later, and she was like, let me hit that, when they were all on the street corner, like, he gave her, like, a dirty side eye, and, like, so did the other friends. I'm like, why don't they like Detroit? Yeah. And I was like, this is just so weird. Yeah,
and then he started hitting on her a couple of scenes later. It was just like, what? Squeeze, why? So I disagree. I mean, I'm not going to agree with that.
Okay.
Squeeze is trash.
Okay. I mean, I'm not fully disagreeing with you because I'm pretty sure I felt the same way the first time.
Freshly squeezed orange juice.
Freshly squeezed.
That wasn't a pun. I felt the need to use squeeze in different contexts. Moving on. Code switching. This is definitely a real thing. Especially within the black community. Actually, this is one of the topics in the Just Right video. Code switching is definitely a thing, especially within the black community, which is why I think Danny Glover's character, Langston, is the one that introduces Cash to it. White people want us to sound like them, except when they don't, at least in a professional setting. I can say that for sure. Using a professional voice, quote unquote, is just using the quote unquote white voice. I know a lot of black people, a few in my family even, that have to code switch when it comes to work because that's not how they really speak. I have to do it at my job. I've had to do it at most of my jobs, not the one at Family Dollar.
That'd be asking a lot of a Family Dollar.
Yeah, no. But at the bank, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. The Board of Education. I mean, I'm not dealing with customers there, but like I'm not myself there. Code switching actually, and I don't know if I should be quoting this show, something that has a whole musical number in Big Mouth. I wasn't sure if I should be quoting that show because it's, in all honesty, just as absurd of this movie, if not more than this movie. Mr. Bleep lost his identity because the code switching, the white voice meshed with his personality. So even after we see him use his normal voice, he's still speaking about opportunity and getting what you could get out of the business. And as far as Cash got code switching, he's like, yo, you made your money, you made it to where you wanted to, but there's still more to be had under this billionaire white guy. That's all I had on it, but I'm sure there's a lot more that can be said about code switching. It's unfortunate.
Well, if people want another thing that has a lot of commentary on code switching, The Hate You Give goes into it in some really interesting ways that are like, I don't want to say it's completely different from this movie, but it looks at some different sides of code switching.
Like dealing with police.
It might. Where I remember it coming up the most in that is like, this isn't really spoilers, so I think I can say it. The main character is a black girl who goes to a predominantly white high school, but she lives in a predominantly black neighborhood. And I think within like, it's either like right away in the trailer and probably within like the first 5 minutes of the movie, she has a whole like voiceover thing that's basically saying like, I have to be basically two different people because I can't act too black around my white friends and I can't act too white around my black friends, or I'm going to be ostracized from those groups.
That's what I dealt with in high school.
Yeah, and it goes into like a lot of... I think that probably features code switching way more than... I don't want to say way more than this because it's pretty prominent here, but it's probably a more prominent theme in that movie. I can't speak to the book because I haven't read it.
yeah, it's in the book. It's everything from the movie is just expanded more in the book. It's like you have more time with the novel, and you get more into the character's mind. I think the code switching is probably more blatant in this one than in the movie The Hate You Give, but The Hate You Give is probably more realistic. This movie kind of hypes it up for comedic purposes, but its unapologeticness is also realistic. I also think another movie from that year that shows it and is also really literal with it is Black Klansman, where they have to have a white guy literally speak on the phone and interpret
Oh,
and
yeah.
all that. It's an unfortunate truth. It goes through like everybody who isn't a presenting cisgendered straight white dude.
Yeah, and it's what I think this movie doesn't get into quite as much because, like, I think a lot of times when I hear people use the term code switching and when I use it myself, it's usually talking about like language, but it also kind of encompasses like dress and hair to an extent. Like there's a lot of studies and cases where like schools will ban some hairstyle or like coloring your hair or certain piercings.
Or having shoulders out.
Mm-hmm.
That was at my school.
My school. My school was. Have I told you guys that my school was a weird like K through 12 situation where you just didn't leave?
No.
Well, it was
No.
one of those. It was. I went to a private school in suburban Delaware, and it was one of those situations. And it was a dress code of you had to have a polo shirt that was buttoned up, tucked in, pants, belt,
Oh my
dress
God.
shoes, socks. Your hair, if you were a boy, couldn't touch past the top of your ears. It also
What?
the back of your hair couldn't touch the top of your collar. You couldn't have facial hair. You couldn't have tattoos. You couldn't wear makeup if you were a boy. You couldn't do anything with your nails. It was very just like this, okay, there. And then if you were a girl, and you could only wear certain clothes, like you could wear like beige, gray, white, blue, and black. And then when I went into middle school, we got brown, and then high school, we got pink. And it's like, whoa, you see a boy wearing pink, that's crazy. But everything else still applied. And then girls, it was a little bit more lenient. You could wear makeup, you could do stuff with your nails. You couldn't have tattoos, and you could have longer hair, but you couldn't have short hair. You know, you had to have longer hair. If you had short hair or any hair that might have presented a non-feminine aesthetic, no go.
What the fuck, man?
Yeah. Well, the insidious thing about all of that is that it's kind of wrapped up in this language of professionalism. And in some cases, I think that is true. But in a lot of cases, like with dress code and hair and stuff like that, it's really coming from a place of sometimes it's racism, sometimes it's homophobia or transphobia, where it's like you are trying to get people to conform to cisness, straightness, whiteness, whatever the case is.
Some businesses don't let black people or don't hire black people because of their locked hair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen a couple articles about that for sure. There are some classes I've taken that have, shown us articles about that kind of stuff and like the stats on it.
When I started working, I'm not going to name the name of the bank, but when I started working at the bank, they told me I couldn't wear my earring. And I only had one at the time. I have both ears pierced now. Yeah, they told me I couldn't wear my earring. And once my dad found out, he got pissed off. He was like, that's like a rite of passage for our family. Like, I got my first ear pierced when I was freshman in college. Like, Christmas vacation that time. And he was like, he was just like, you need to ask them what's the reason you can't wear your earring. And I had also gotten my hair cut differently just for the interview, just so they saw me a little more professional, quote unquote, I guess. Because the manager of the branch I was training at, who was a black guy, told me that I couldn't wear my earring. Once I went back and I had to go, it was messed up. I didn't like doing this, but I had to go above him to ask why I couldn't wear my earring. And I got a call one day and they're just like, no, you can wear your earring as long as it's not like anything offensive, like a skull or whatever, or something stupid. I was like, okay, cool. And then I went back to the black guy, the branch manager, and he was like, oh, cool. I think I apologized for going over him, but he's like, oh, cool. No, you're good. I didn't know that because when I was first there, when I was first hired, they told me I couldn't wear my earrings. So it's, that's good to know. It's stupid because they think their customers are going to think a certain way about the faces of the branch. I was a teller, the faces of the branch, because we have a certain cut of hair, or because we're wearing earrings, or to go to what Dave was talking about, the tattoos, the fingernails, the whatever.
Yeah, we couldn't have piercings absurd. Either. There was a lot, I forgot, but yeah, piercings. We couldn't have hats, couldn't wear hoodies.
Dog, what?
Yeah, we could wear jeans. Listen to this. We could wear jeans, but we could wear it on one day every other Friday, and if we
every other Friday,
and if we paid $1.
Oh, it was one of those fundraiser things. Yeah.
Yep. And then we could wear jeans.
David.
Bucket jean days.
And like I remember, because when you were telling that story, I was just thinking about freshman year, because my one friend Jaden, that was the year he decided he wanted to get dreadlocks, and that was this huge debate, because for the first 6 months it was taking a while, but once it hit the collar, it was like, oh shit. And then it became this huge ethical debate because he was growing it, because that's just what he wanted to do, and that was something in his family, and everyone was like, this should be his right, and it became a huge thing.
What happened?
Eventually he got a detention. He got 2 detentions, and then my class specifically, and then the class below us, we kind of did a miniature little what the heck walk into the people who gave him the detention in the office, and explain to them how this is just inappropriate. And then there was another kid, he was he was growing facial hair, and he was lying to them, but he was like, this is my religious right. And then it became this whole thing, and then they just got too scared, and they were like, all right, just do whatever, and they just let those 2 people do those things. So he actually got to grow his hair out, and it got pretty long. It's probably the longest hair on any guy that I've seen while I was at
Good
school.
for him.
Mm-hmm.
This was I hear bad things about Catholic school. This was a private school?
Yeah, private. And if you want to, it wasn't Catholic, but we did have a Bible club that you could attend on Thursdays. And the only reason people went is because they gave you free pizza. But the real kicker is the person who ran the Bible club came out. Well, he didn't come out, but it came out about him that he was a child molester and he molested somebody in the school.
Oh no.
Yep.
My high school had a Jewish club, but it was mostly filled with black kids, and the teacher, who was actually my math teacher, calculus teacher, she would just give them pizza every week.
Well, that seems like a better deal.
Yeah, I went there for, I think, tutoring after school one day, and she was also having her club that day, because my calculus teacher was Jewish, and I went, looked around, I was like, this is the Jewish club, huh? I just hear a bunch of smacking. I don't think they're here to learn about the Torah. But okay. Is it the Torah?
That's lip smacking, right? As in they're eating? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, as in lip smack. I forget that means other things. I don't think I've ever heard of a school as bad as that, David. That's awful. How was Drexel compared to that once you got out of that?
Oh, Drexel was a cakewalk. The fact that I was blown away that I could grow my hair out, that I could go to a class with a hoodie on. I remember if it was the winter time and I was in middle school or high school, I would have to wear my hoodie and then get in front of the door and then take it off and then like carry it in with my book bag, or else like people would be at the door like ready to write you up. And I was like,
are you?
Yeah.
Yo.
And it's like, I'm a kid.
Yo.
Like, what are you doing? Or like, if you had a hat, it's like, are you kidding me? It's raining. Like, I can't even wear this hat. Like, you're wild right now.
Hoodies and hats were my entire high school and still part of my identity.
I was gonna say that's like most of what I've seen you wear is like hoodies and hats.
Yeah, nah, bro, nah. Either my parents would have fought somebody at that school, or I probably would have fought somebody at that school, or I would have just gone to a different school. Ain't no way. I can't believe you went through. That just sounds like prison.
Yeah, and then like for even like more where I'm from, it's not like terror because Delaware is a democratic state, but there are areas, pockets of conservatism that isn't really like conservatism, it's Trumpism. And like I remember when the election was going down with Trump and Hillary, like that was prime high school, and just seeing how cold that hallway got and everybody, and just see like how these people that I grew up with, and I was like just thinking like, you know, why are they bullying me? I don't know anything about myself. And then as I'm getting to learn who I am and what's everything going on, and then I see who they are, I was like, oh wow, this is a stark waking up. This is scary.
That's insane. Well, I'm glad you're out of that. Oddly, I think prison has more freedom. Ironically enough, like that in prison, don't they allow you to do more than half of the shit you were talking about?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's regulating like their hair to that extent.
Tattoos, piercings, any of that?
Tattoos, definitely not. They're actually even more accepting because they have different wings for like transgender patients, for like transgender inmates and stuff. And it's like they wouldn't have my school.
A lot of times, I think no, but in some cases, hopefully.
Yeah, some. I'm not sure the actual like majority to how many, but there are some of that. And like my school, if you had a disability, you were not allowed in. If you were trans, you weren't coming in. Like I think I knew like one openly gay person in my entire like high school, just in general. It was wild. And if you were just any other, it was just like you were like the joke. So it's just like take your pick. I'm sure you can all imagine what anyone could say about anybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah, and it certainly wouldn't be an anomaly. Like I don't have a ton of like personal experience with that, but I've certainly heard things. I think I clicked by an article yesterday that was something about like either, I don't remember what it was. It was some school like dress code thing though that, you know, was basically what you're talking about. Like it happens in jobs too, but schools are also like a major place where that kind of stuff is controversial, like what hairstyles are allowed, and
we couldn't wear ripped jeans.
Yeah, that too.
It's so stupid. And the argument that annoys me about it is everyone's like, we give them uniforms and like all of this so they don't get
That's probably
jealous.
why I didn't see as much of it, because I went to a Catholic school with a uniform, so a lot of that wasn't really in question a lot of
It's
times.
like,
But we had hair regulations too, I'm sure. I just didn't really bump into it.
yeah, and that's always the argument, is you give them uniforms so there's not conflict, and so they're like comfortable and no one's comparing themselves to each other, and they're not gonna like fight for someone who might have something nicer or bully someone who might have something not as nice. But
They're still gonna find ways.
they still
yeah.
find ways. Cause it was in 8th grade, and there was this kid. I'm not gonna say his name, but he took this one black kid who was in my gym class, because it was a very white school. It was like majority white, and then it went to Indian, and then black. So it was like very little. There's probably like a handful of black people in my whole class, and this one black kid in my class he's changing, and he doesn't even see what's going on because he's not there. And this like herd of white guys just like go and grab it, and they just write the N-word on his new sneakers. It was Air Force Ones, and they just take the Sharpie and just completely ruin it, and then just like run away. Nothing happened. There was a uniform.
That's pretty fucked.
So I just think that's bullshit. It's like, the bullying will be there. Let these kids express themselves, because they're the ones who really need it, especially if they're going to have to suffer through this bullshit anyway, because the people who are in power aren't doing anything to help them.
Nope.
I don't know. I feel like every time I hear about like anything with schools in the news, it's just like basically like schools and like, I guess kids issues is like the best word I can think for it, is like, it's just such a battleground for like, what's the word? Culture war issues, I guess. I feel like there's another term that I'm not thinking of right now, but just like kind of stupid things. Anyway, that's not really like relevant, but I hate how much like is done in the name of kids that is like just so blatantly serving some other like bigoted agenda. It's very stupid.
Everybody's an asshole.
I like to think
Kids
not
are
everybody,
assholes.
but a depressing amount of people are assholes.
Let's move on to naming.
I did have a little bit more on code switching if we want to stick with that.
Sorry.
Just like a couple of notes. One thing I thought was interesting that I didn't know from the first time, Tessa Thompson, Detroit, she, during her showcase, the subtitles call it out as she's using a white voice during that. And I thought before she was actually like, it was just Tessa Thompson putting on an accent. They actually do the same thing as with the other two. They have Lily James do her white voice. So I guess it's just not quite it's a little more subtle with that like voice
Is Tessa Thompson, does she have an accent or not in real life? I've never seen her in an interview.
I don't know, but I guess I've at least heard her use like that. I guess Lily James's white voice for that part just sounded like close enough to her actual voice that I didn't.
Yeah, I was
didn't
like,
think
she
it
sounds
was-
like she did, and I think I've only ever seen her in.
Yeah, because she has like some kind of British or Australian accent in that, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like quite the same, but I just thought it was her. It's not. They do the same thing. So I don't know if like the only like symbolism I thought to unpack with that was like maybe it's saying that like even in this world of like woke political art, she still has to like code switch in order to be accepted there. Doesn't seem like it's trying to call that out too hard, but you know, they went and cast a pretty big name actor, so that's some money you're spending on it. So I would think there's got to be at least some kind of intention there, even if it's not what I just spelled out.
Mm-hmm.
I was just noticing as well this time, like some of the other like consequences that come from cash code switching in this movie. Like I think we kind of alluded to it earlier. Like for most of the movie, he's like succeeding through using his white voice, but then at the party, he has to like act stereotypically black in the way that like the party guests expect him to in order to appease them.
That was insane.
Yeah, very uncomfortable.
Come on, rap. As a black person that actually can't rap and has been egged on by my own black friends to rap, yeah, that made me feel really uncomfortable. It was really well done.
Mm-hmm. It was really well done.
Then he went into up there and he said what they wanted, like blatantly said what they wanted to hear, and that was a really good scene.
Yeah. The other thing I saw with it was there's a little bit of backlash that he gets from some of his friends, like after he starts like succeeding at the job. I forget exactly what they say, but one of them like calls out, like they're like, okay, you're not like that black though. I forget exactly the wording, but they kind of call that out. And I found today looking on IMDb, Donald Glover was apparently supposed to play Cash, but then he recommended Lakeith Stanfield.
I love that. Good for him.
Yeah, I think it said it was because he was in Solo, so he was too busy.
But he sent off their recommend. That's fine.
That's so great. But why I bring it up is because Donald Glover, in like his music and stand-up and interviews, he's talked a lot about how like people perceive him as being like not black enough for whoever.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting that he was one of like the primary people. I think he could have done well in this role too. Like he would have been. Obviously, Lakeith Stanfield does really well here, but
it's just earned. It's just earned from Atlanta. You know?
Yeah, it feels. I mean, it certainly feels more similar to Earn than to. I forget Lakeith Stanfield's character in Atlanta, but it feels more
Darius.
like that. Darius. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was like some more like they kind of show even more to code switching there.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate reality of this world right now.
Yeah, but I think it's being helped a bit by the fact that we're like able to call it out now, and like I think a major thing that this movie does with it is decode the whole thing of like very blatantly. Even if you just watch the trailer for this movie, they call out the white voice thing, and that's like specifically showing like, hey, even though this thing is like you're not going to be able to get an actual telemarketer to sound like Patton Oswalt when they call somebody, like acting white or like in a way that we culturally like consider closer to whiteness has benefits professionally, and like a lot of professionalism or like stuff that is at least called professionalism is actually just kind of people's way of saying we want you to act white.
Yep.
And it's like it's good that this movie is kind of like decoding that.
There's nothing left for code switching. Let's move on to names. There's a lot of weird names in this movie. I think most of them have some sort of significance to either the character or the themes of the movie. Cassius Green, pretty obvious. They even call him Cash, spelled C-A-S-H. His uncle's name is Serge Green, Sergio Green. That's funny.
Is there a pun there that I'm missing?
Surge, like a surge of green, surge of money.
Oh, okay.
Detroit, I didn't understand why. When he said Troit in the beginning, waking her up, I was like, don't tell me her name is Detroit. Don't. Because, okay, I'm going to admit, black people have named their kids some weird shit over the past couple of years. Yeah, I want to say recently, past couple of years, I heard of one name that was L-A, Ladasha. I don't...
Oh, you pronounced the hyphen dash?
Yes.
No, please, no. That sounds like a Star Wars droid. Not dash.
There was the entire Key and Peele sketch, the football sketch, named off of started because of the one football player named DeBrickashaw Ferguson. Detroit, I thought it had something to do with just one of those weird names. I don't know if there was a sub-reason for this. Detroit being with Cash Green, and then Detroit also messing with Squeeze. I couldn't find anything. I couldn't dig up anything as to why she was named Detroit.
Yeah, I guess, it's probably not like trying to comment on the actual city. If it is, I have no idea what it's trying to say.
Yeah. And I've heard Detroit isn't the greatest place, so when she did the whole art thing and had people throw things at her, I was like, is this saying something about the state of the city? Maybe? I don't know. Not a dig at Detroit. It's just an observation, I guess. That sounds mean. Anyway, moving on. Salvador, I don't think there's any significance with his name. Is it Jermaine? Jermaine Fowler, his character? Is it his cousin? Or just his friend?
I think it's just his friend. I could be wrong about that.
Squeeze scores. I don't know why he was named Squeeze. He was squeezing.
I think there's something there, like putting pressure on like Regal View.
The companies.
Is it his home
capitalism.
squeeze? Are they friends?
Oh, he home squeezed Detroit, all right.
Oh my god.
But apparently, maybe not.
Everything but.
I also wondered when she said that, was that supposed to be like an innuendo where it was like everything but with one T and then everything but with two T's? Because that changes.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
And then when he asked again, it's like everything but, and I'm like, what is this like reassurance?
I was just kind of thinking it was like
adding the second T does change everything.
That really does change everything.
Steve Liff. I thought he was at first. I thought uplifting. Nope, he wasn't doing that. I thought maybe lifting himself above others. I saw was it the book that says I'm on top or whatever.
Yeah,
lifting himself above other people. Mr. Bleat. Again, name stripped from he's just his, like Just Right said, he's just his job position. Tiana Debocherry. They even point this out. Her name comes to fruition, or tries to, when she's talking, taking Cassius to the power caller's floor, and she was really awkward.
You know, people who wear pink are 35% more likely to start a franchise.
Is that supposed to be flirty? Like, what does that mean?
And then she just like throws herself out of it, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." It's just this huge elevator.
As soon as I heard that stat, though, I was like, "How do you even measure that? How do we have any idea if that's true?"
And how often do you have to wear the pink shirt for that to be a stat?
I wear pink like occasionally, but that doesn't.
I have a peach shirt, a salmon shirt.
No,
Does that count?
No.
Okay.
I've never had.
I'm sorry.
How would you measure that?
I wish they showed us Armie Hammer's character in pink. That would have really been fun at home.
And what would really make it is if he had to explain that it's actually, see, this isn't pink, this is salmon. It's a distinct off pink color.
Oh, like the doors? That is very clearly olive green.
Yeah. That is a jade door. The jade door. All right, I can see you're a little freaked out right now. Just what I gave you was 100% Peruvian, man.
Langston, Danny Glover's character, I didn't know of any significance of that.
I mean,
No.
all I can think of is Langston Hughes as a person.
Langston
I don't know of any other contexts that name has ever come up in.
Hughes. Could Danny Glover be Langston Hughes?
We've never seen them in the same room together, maybe.
Coincidence? Yes.
Is Langston Hughes dead, though?
Yes.
feel like-
He's big dead.
Forrest Whitaker was Demarius. Rosario Dawson was the voice in the elevator. They didn't have names. Demarius had a name. His name was Demarius, and he was the Equisapien. All right, that's it.
David, did you have anything else on the names or anything?
No, I think the names that mean something are obvious, and the names that aren't obvious, I'm not sure if they mean something.
Like Detroit.
Yeah, like Detroit.
The only other thing I just thought Steve Lift was just a thinly veiled, like, this is supposed to be Steve Jobs.
Why didn't they name him Steve Careers?
I mean, that would have been close. There was something, I forget exactly when it comes up, but somebody says like a brand name. It's like Phonarola. I think it's something that's like really close to Motorola. And like there's a few other things where I feel like they're just on the edge of naming some real life brand, like they do in the IT crowd, where they have Friend Face instead of Facebook and Cuke instead of Coke. Like there were a couple of things like that in here.
Puke?
Yeah,
No,
that was
Cuke.
some of my...
Cuke. Not puke. Cuke instead of Coke.
No, Puke is better. Puke is funnier.
One last thing. I was right after watching it, I was like, it'd be an interesting double feature to do Devil Wears Prada and Sorry to Bother You as like two like work culture movies side by side. I think that'd be a fun double feature.
Double feature meaning,
You know, you just watch them together.
if we somehow ended up on an ad of some sort, for if this episode was just a full YouTube ad for a different video, sorry to bother you.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's go through the boilerplate then. So we're gonna round out our trilogy of long named movies with Call Me by Your Name, and then we're gonna switch to a very short titled movie, Troy. You can check out our YouTube channel. We have our Patreon for $1 a month. We have our merch on Zazzle. Our logo's by Kelsey Hendry. Also, leave us a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. I forgot to plug that, but that's a thing you can do also. The show is on Twitter at INTAnalysis18. I am at Ev_Wes. And where are both of you?
I'm on Twitter at Jelani T. Kelly. Instagram at Jelani T. Kelly. Base Phoenix on YouTube.
I am in a worry-free facility
I knew that was going to be it.
trying to find a horse serum and also figure out how to kill the locust, which is a reference to a movie that's in the major theaters. So listeners, if you've seen that movie, you'll understand. That's an Easter egg for you from me.
Oh, wait, is it Jurassic World?
It is.
Okay.
What?
Yeah,
The
I know.
locusts?
Can you believe it? It should be called Locust World.
There's locusts in Dinosaur World?
I've just
Yeah.
seen people who have written reviews mention, like, what the fuck are these locusts doing in this movie?
I'm infiltrating Psycorp or whatever, Biosyn. I'm infiltrating Biosyn to get the locust and Worry Free to get the horse serum. And we're going to have locust horses. And they're not going to be able to fly because they're horse meat, if you know what I'm saying. It's going to weigh them down. That's where I'll be.